Okay, how do you prep an Illustrator vector file for animation in After Effects? Pretty simple, but a little bit confusing just because after you check a button, you have to kind of reorganize your layers. That's the confusing part. Otherwise, it's really just one click. All right, check out my layer here. Very important for me to just mention that a layer in Illustrator is different than a layer in Photoshop. A layer in Photoshop is simply an object, but a layer in Illustrator is a group of objects. As you can see, I'm turning off the visibility for my layer here, but inside my layer, I've got an arrow and a heart vector shape, two shapes inside of one layer. So I've got my layer selected and I move to the options button and I choose release to layers sequence. Okay. Once I release to layers sequence, both of those objects get placed into their own layer, and it seems like you're done, but if you just save this vector file and then import it into After Effects, you won't get the individual layers, so you can't animate them independently. So before you save this Illustrator vector file, select both of your layers in layer 1 and drag them outside. Okay, at this point, I don't need layer 1 because it's just an empty group at this point, so I delete it, and I'm going to rename these layers so that I'll have a proper naming convention when I import this into After Effects as a composition. Here I am in After Effects. I'm double clicking to import, and of course I'm going to import this heart vector that's not released, or actually I just saved it as heart vector. Let me do that again, sorry about that. Importing this heart vector, and make sure you switch from footage to composition. Okay, if I double click, there's my layers that have been released to sequence. Okay, kind of a weird term, but that's what they call it. And if I want to animate these objects separately, I now have the ability to set a keyframe for the position of the arrow, and then maybe I'll go back about 10 frames and I'll move that whole arrow off screen, hitting the letter N to set the end of my work area, and this arrow is coming in flying through. If I want to make it look like it's actually piercing through the heart, here's the standard animation trick, is to duplicate objects. I'm going to drag this new duplicated heart above the arrow, and if I hit return, I can rename this. I'll call this heart cover. If I solo this heart layer so that that's the only thing that I'm looking at, it's easier to identify what I'm doing. I'm activating the pen tool. I could also have hit the letter G, and watch how I just create a mask isolating this little area of the heart. And when I look at that in conjunction with the other two layers, when I hit play, it looks like this arrow is piercing through the heart now. Okay, very easy exercise to try to mimic on your own. You could make your own Illustrator file, or you can use the supplied Illustrator file and try releasing to layers on your own.